on to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Mark Agnew, please, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and honourable members for the invitation to speak as part of the committee's UK study. It's a pleasure to be back here and see you all again virtually. As committee's members will appreciate, the UK is a significant trading partner for Canada as our third largest goods export market and second largest destination for foreign direct investment abroad. As Trevor alluded to a moment ago, it's quite important, particularly in the EU 28 context, with 40% of our merchandise exports and 36% of our services exports from the EU 28 going to the UK. However, despite the impressive overall rankings, it still is an overall small proportion of our global trade share behind the United States. The relationship we feel has potential to grow, and certainly Britain is an ideal market for Canadian companies seeking to diversify given its shared language and ways of doing business. With the EU separation question firmly decided into the UK, we need to look ahead to dealing with the world as it is. The reality means that once the UK's transition period with the EU ends on December 31, the UK will no longer be treated as if it were a party to CETA by the Government of Canada. Given how important the UK is as part of the EU's 28 export basket, the short answer is that Brexit matters for Canadian businesses. The Canadian Chamber has not completed our own in-house modeling, but some external work serves as a rough guide for what the potentials are. Canadian economist Dan Churiak conducted analysis in 2018 as part of the British government's CETA impact assessment. The study found that by 2030, the value of the UK's participation in CETA was worth about £1.1 billion, or approximately 1.9 billion Canadian dollars in terms of Canadian exports to the UK. Although this is definitely not a precise measurement, given A, we don't know the final architecture of the UK's trade arrangements with the EU and Canada. We don't know B, what the UK's sort of final picture will be in 2030, given that the study was done with a 10-year time horizon. And we also have divergences in the UK and the EU's MFN tariff rates, but it nonetheless provides at least a decent rough signpost on the potential for what a UK-Canada trade deal means to the Canadian economy. I'd like to just be a bit more specific now on some of the immediate implications of not having a transition agreement in place by December 31. Number one are tariffs, and Canadian businesses will lose preferential access to the UK market, making our products less competitive. Some examples of where we would face tariffs under the UK's global tariff regime include lobster products with tariffs of up to 10%, plastics under HS 3908 with tariffs of up to 6%, vehicles under HS 8703 with tariffs of up to 10%, and beef products under HS 201 with an ad valorem tariff of 12% plus specific tariff units per kilogram. And I should add here, note that Canadian beef products have a TRQ under CETA, and certainly any TRQs that are transposed into a UK-Canada context need to be commercially viable for Canadian companies to take advantage of them. The second benefit that I would like to draw to your attention that we will not have without a transition agreement in place are the discussions around regulatory cooperation. The CETA provides a framework for critical regulatory dialogues to occur on agriculture non-tariff barriers and through the conformity assessment protocol. Regulatory cooperation is not glamorous, it's the nuts and bolts of trade and absolutely critical. Our trade agreements have an important role in shining a spotlight on the work that regulators do to make sure that issues are advancing in a timely manner for businesses. And certainly agriculture non-tariff barriers have been quite problematic in the EU context, and we hope that the UK will eventually take a different approach. The last area are services exports. The CETA's temporary entry chapter provides provisions on intra-company transferees, and this means that Canadian companies can bring in specialized talent to work at Canadian operations. The CETA's contractual service suppliers provisions mean that specialized skills can be brought in to fill supply chain gaps for Canadian businesses. The CETA's provisions on these entry categories reduce business burdens, and without them in a UK context, companies will need to use other routes that are more cumbersome. Simply put, if CETA matters, then transitioning it into a bilateral agreement also matters. We've been working closely with our UK counterparts at the Confederation of British Industry to advance this, and will continue to do so until the deal is done. And certainly we hope this committee will be able to facilitate an expeditious passage of the implementing legislation once the agreement is finalized. As members of the committee will appreciate, everything you do in trade builds on what came before it. CETA was a gold standard when it was negotiated, but the Canada-UK transition agreement should be seen as a starting point for going further. I'd like to quickly highlight 5 areas where we think we can do this. First is digital trade. Since the CETA's negotiation, global trade discussions on digital trade rules have taken on a much greater focus. This includes the WTO, as well as our digital trade chapters in CPTPP and CUSMA. discussions with the UK on digital trade to support cross-border data flows by Canadian companies. Number 2 is regulatory cooperation. The future gains on merchandise trade will ultimately be driven by reducing non-tariff barriers given how low applied tariff rates are for most products. This is particularly important for Canadian agriculture exports, as I alluded to a moment ago, where it's been a tough slog in the EU. But there's also forward-looking work that we can do in areas like health sciences, procurement, as well as cybersecurity. Number 3 is critical minerals. The global supply of rare earth minerals that enable the production of many high-tech products remains dangerously concentrated, and future discussions between the UK and Canada should facilitate greater private sector production and movement of these rare earth extracted products. Fourth is trade facilitation. The pandemic has emphasized the value of the efficient movement of goods globally, and Canada and the UK should explore ways to introduce additional measures that would modernize customs processes in CETA and build on the TFA agreement from the WTO. Fifth and finally is labor mobility. Enhancing the ability of companies to attract talent and access services contracts abroad is critical to diversifying what we are exporting, not just to where. Activities like after-sales servicing can actually be more lucrative for companies than the original export itself, and so we should try to be ambitious in how do we approach this business activity. And without a bilateral agreement in place, certainly these 5 areas and work on other areas like sustainability will be difficult to go further on. Thank you for your consideration. We look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agnew.